Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. Today I'm sharing some cards I made using Love From Lizi's April 2021 card kit. The theme is Really Dig You, and as you can see, it's a fun gardening theme. As I'm recording this voiceover, the kit is still available. I will have links provided in the description box below. This is a monthly kit and quantities are always limited. So if you are interested, I would suggest not waiting. Let's go ahead and get started with card number 1. I decided to jump right in by using the largest stamp that's on the stamp set. So it's this fun little potting shed. I am stamping this on some textured cardstock, so I did need to ink it up several times. And it still doesn't have a super solid impression, but that's okay. Since the ink wasn't completely dry, I decided to do some heat embossing as well. I added the Glossy Clear embossing powder from Love From Lizi. Once the image was heat set, all those lines that didn't stamp completely now seemed solid. And it also adds that lovely embossed look. The kit does include the dies for all of the images, so I went and cut that out. For the background paper, I'm using this soft peach paper with little blue hearts sprinkled all over the background. I wanted to give that potting shed something to stand on, so I used some green cardstock and some stitched hillside dies. I've already stamped out the sentiment. This is long time no see. I'm going to layer the two greens together, and I'll add a little scrap piece of cardstock to that lower area just so it's at the same level. And then adhere that to the bottom of this panel. So I know a sky wouldn't necessarily be peach with little hearts raining down, but I thought it looked fun. I'll layer this on some blue cardstock. Put my card front onto a card base. For this card, I am leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. Before I adhere the potting shed, I will add a scrap piece of cardstock behind it, just where it goes off of those hills. And I did have to cut the little curve at the bottom. So you're not going to see that cardstock, but it'll help so there isn't that noticeable dip on the front of the card from all those different layers. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and adhere it to the center. Now I'll bring in some of the ephemera pieces. I have one of the little girls, have the watering can, and a couple of potted plants. So wherever they go off of another layer, I will add that small scrap piece of cardstock. And then for the yellow plant, I am going to pop it up using some thin foam squares. For that first potted plant, I didn't need quite as much cardstock, so luckily that glue hadn't adhered yet and I could rip it off. I'll put the foam squares on the back of the yellow plant, adhere that in front of the other potted plant. For the little girl, I'll add that scrap piece of cardstock to the left side. Then I'll use some liquid adhesive and attach her to the left side of the shed. This little girl is so cute. She has quite the bouquet of flowers on her head. I also added some foam squares to the back of the watering can. Then I decided to add the little weather vane. I stamped it on some gray cardstock, used the coordinating die to cut this out. Even if you don't do a lot of coloring, you can still use the fun stamped images that are included in the kit. Next, I'll use one of the add-ons. This is the Leaves and Vines die set. There's also a stamp set, and I will use that later on in the video. I decided to create a wreath to put on the potting shed. Probably not adhering it where it would really need to go since I'm putting it above the door slightly. So it kind of blocked the door if you were trying to open it, but that's okay. I cut out 4, or maybe it's 5 different pieces, and just adhering them on top of each other to create a little wreath. Now after I had those together, it didn't look full enough, so I did cut out 3 more pieces. Just add some more liquid adhesive to the back and fill in those little gapped areas. And I could have used a couple of different leaf or vine pieces, but I decided to stick with just the one. Now to finish off the card, I'll add just a couple of the sequins. I'm using this cream color, it's almost a peach color. I'll put 2 of them in the upper left-hand corner. I was trying to add another one since generally embellishments look better in odd numbers, but it just didn't look quite right. So I decided to just do the 2 in that upper left-hand corner. Put some liquid adhesive on the card, using my embellishment wand to help pick up those sequins, and then press them in place. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 1. And I think this is one of my favorite cards, but do let me know which card is your favorite. Now moving on to card number 2, I'm using a card sketch from Mojo Monday. This is number 552. I love this scarecrow pattern paper, so I wanted to make sure to feature it on at least one card. I'm using some polka dot paper for the background. The colors match perfectly with that scarecrow pattern paper. I'm adding some solid cardstock for those narrow strips on the left, since adding any more pattern paper would have been just a little too busy. And having that red and dark blue really brings out the colors on the pattern paper. Now before I adhere this piece, I did add that scrap piece of cardstock to the right side. Again, just trying to keep everything at the same level. And then I'll adhere it using some liquid adhesive. The kit does include several sheets of colored cardstock, but since I add a lot of layers to my cards, I will be bringing in some additional cardstock. This dark blue cardstock is some from my craft room. Now you can see I did cut a scallop circle out of that background piece. I will be adding that here in a moment. To tie in with that scarecrow pattern paper, I'm using the matching ephemera piece. This scarecrow is so cute. I cut out a stitched circle die cut from some white shimmer cardstock. Before I adhere this circle die cut in place, I put some foam squares on the left side and then some liquid adhesive on the back. For the sentiment on this card, I'm bringing in an older Love From Lizi stamp set. It was from a previous monthly kit, but you can also purchase it separately. It's called Enjoy the Little Things. I thought the sentiments fit perfectly. For this card, I used the Hello There sentiment. Stamped it on this very pale lilac cardstock, layered it on that same dark blue cardstock. And I'm trying to tuck it underneath that scallop circle. I'll add a couple of the foam squares to the right side and then liquid adhesive on the left. Trying to make sure it's all nice and level. For the little scarecrow ephemera piece, I will pop her up using some more thin foam squares. Try to make sure to get good coverage so there isn't one area that sags. And then adhere to the center of that white circle. Next, I'll add a little bit of sparkle to the scarecrow using a glitter brush from scrapbook.com. And since her eyes look like buttons, I decided to add a little bit of shine. I'm using the clear pops of color from scrapbook.com. I'm just adding a small drop to each of the eyes for that extra shine. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 2. Now moving on to card number 3. I'll be using Love From Lizi's Background Builder die set. She just recently restocked this. So there's all these fun dies that you can mix and match to create different layouts. One of my favorite pattern papers in the whole kit features lots of tiny pink rain boots. So I use the smallest circle die to cut out 4 of the rain boots. I also cut out 4 square die cuts. Now after I cut this 4th rain boot out, I noticed there's little blue lines. The first 3 I cut out, the lines go up and down, but that 4th one, it went side to side, and that bothered me. They need to all go the same direction. So I did go and cut out another piece. Now for that larger rectangle piece, I'm using some solid pink cardstock. I love the stitch detail from all of the dies. I added that pink piece on some white shimmer cardstock, layered it on some blue cardstock. Put my card front onto a card base. So on this card, the only pattern paper I'm using is the little pink boots. Everything else is solid cardstock. I'll adhere those 4 squares to the center of this pink piece. Start off with 1, trying to make sure to get them nice and straight. I am using liquid adhesive since there is that little bit of wiggle room to adjust everything before it adheres in place. I'll get that last boot in place. For the sentiment, I stamped it on the same pink cardstock, and this is a stamp that's included in the kit. Don't let things bug you. Thought that worked out well with some rain boots. Finish off the card, I'll add a few of the sequins, this time just the pink color. I'll put 2 of them in the upper left-hand corner and then 3 in the lower right-hand corner. I love the variety of colors included in this kit. It's a little bit of something for everyone. And of course I had to make sure to feature a card that's mostly pink. So once I get all of those sequins in place, I decided to add a little bit of sparkle to the rain boots. Because who wouldn't want sparkly rain boots? I think a pink sparkly pair would be really fun. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 3. Now moving on to card number 4. I'm using this fun pattern paper for the background that has pink ladders and pink rain boots. I'll add a scalloped rectangle die cut to the center, and I use some shimmer paper for this piece. For the sentiment, I've already stamped this out. I really dig you. I love the little heart that's at the very end of the sentiments in the kit. And of course I had to use the pink boot ephemera piece. Before adhering the sentiment to the card, I will add that scrap cardstock to the outer edges, just where it goes off of that scalloped rectangle piece. And then since the very bottom will hang off of that scallop piece just a little bit, I will add that thin scrap piece of cardstock there as well. Use some liquid adhesive and adhere this piece in place. Trying to make sure to get it nice and straight. There are some faint lines in the background. I'm not sure if you can see that on the video. And for a little extra sparkle, I'll add some Love From Lizi peel-offs. This is a light blue color. Using the thinnest width and putting it just on the outside edge of that cardstock piece. Then I can add my card panel to this dark blue cardstock layer. And I'll put my card front onto a card base. For this card, I will have that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. So overall, this is a very simple card design. I really wanted to feature the fun pink rain boot ephemera piece. I will pop up this piece using some thin foam squares. Make sure to get good coverage, then I can remove the release paper and then add it to the center of this rectangle piece. For a few finishing touches, I'll add a couple of the mini heart peel-offs in this beautiful pink color. Trying to decide where I wanted to place them. Using the medium and the smallest size. I'll add 2 to the upper right hand corner and 1 to the left of the boots. And I'll still add a little bit of sparkle, this time to the flowers instead of the boots. I'm using that glitter brush from scrapbook.com. And there is my finished card. I wish the video would pick up how sparkly that glitter brush makes the images. It's really pretty. Now moving on to card number 5. I have some lovely floral paper for the background, and I cut this out using a stitched rectangle die. I'll add this piece to a scalloped rectangle die cut. I used some purple pearlescent cardstock. This is one of the add-on bundles you can purchase. I did use some liquid adhesive along the edge where that stitch detail is, just to make sure it's going to lay flat. Then I'll adhere this panel onto my card base. I'll be using 3 of the little girl ephemera pieces. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and attach each of them to an oval die cut. Now all three of these little girls have the same hairstyle and dress and little pink boots, which is really cute. But they have different hair colors and different skin colors. So maybe they're all best friends and decided to have the same look for the day. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and adhere the 3 oval die cuts to the card. I am leaving a little gap toward the bottom so I can add a sentiment. I'll adhere the oval in the center first and then the outer 2 next. Trying to make sure to get them nice and straight. The sentiment on this card is happiness blooms from within. It's from the Enjoy the Little Things stamp set. I thought this sentiment fit nicely with the card. I'll add some of the brand new purple holographic peel-offs to the edge of the sentiment. These are so sparkly and the purple matches beautifully with the pattern paper. I love all the holographic peel-offs Lizi offers. She has the gold and silver, there's a pink, which is my favorite, and now there's purple. So much fun. Before I attach the sentiment, I will add those small scrap pieces of cardstock to the outside edges. And I just need very small pieces, so I had to cut these down even more. Use some liquid adhesive to attach those in place. And then I'll put liquid adhesive on the back of this piece and adhere it to the lower portion of the card. Next, I'll bring in the mini heart peel-offs in that same pink color I used on a previous card, using just the smallest size and putting one on the outside edge of the sentiment. And instead of the girls having sparkly pink boots, they'll have shiny pink boots. I'll add some of the clear pops of color to each of the teeny tiny pink boots. I know it's hard to see in the video, but it does add that little bit of shine. Now moving on to card number 6. I will be using a card sketch. This is OWH number 183. And if you are interested in any of the card sketches I use in this video, I do share all of that information on my coordinating blog post. That link is provided in the description box below, or you can simply head over to KristieMarcotte.com. For this card, I'm using some pattern paper for the background that has lots of the images from the kit. So it has flowers, gardening tools, a little scarecrow. For the paper on the left, I use some more pearlescent paper. This is from the add-on bundle. And then I have some solid green cardstock for that strip along the bottom. I'm adding some of the ribbon from the kit. I put down a piece of double-sided tape first and then attach the ribbon. I'll just wrap the ends around the back, first with some ATG tape, and then just to make sure they're not going to come off later, I'll add some more double-sided tape. I'll remove the release paper, add some more ATG to the back, and add this piece onto some blue cardstock. Then I'll add this card front onto a card base. And for this card, I'm not having any of the white card base showing. I wanted to feature a little bit more of that background pattern paper. I've already stamped out the sentiment, find your inner peas, perfect for that gardener in your life. I'll put a scrap piece of cardstock on the lower portion of this sentiment strip before I attach it on top of that ribbon. Just trying to keep everything nice and level. I'm using 3 of the potted plant ephemera pieces. I'm not following this sketch exactly. I use a lot of sketches more for inspiration. Before I attach this yellow plant, I did put that scrap piece of cardstock on the upper area, but for the other 2, I'm just using some liquid adhesive since they're not going over any other layers. Then for a few finishing touches, I'll add some of the glitter enamel dots in the upper right-hand corner. Can't believe this is the first time I've actually used the glitter enamel dots. Those are always some of my favorites from Lizi's kits. I'll bring in the glitter brush and add it to each of the pots. I think a sparkly pot would be pretty. Then using the peel-offs that are included in the kit, this is a brand new blue color and it's so pretty. I'm using the thinnest width and adding it underneath the sentiment. I want to have a straight line going underneath the sentiment, but I'm still breaking it up where the bottom portion of the letter Y and P are. I could have used a ruler and a light pencil mark to make sure I got it straight, but I usually just eyeball it. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 6. Now moving on to card number 7. The stamp set that's included with the kit has several small stamps of gardening tools. I took all 3 of those, put them on an acrylic block. I have some Versamark ink, and yes, my ink pad is really dirty. I have some blue cardstock, and I'm stamping the little gardening tools randomly on this piece of cardstock. And I'm using the Versamark ink because I want a very light color. This is more a tone-on-tone design. I had a little gap in the center, so I removed one of the stamps. Didn't want to have any of the images overlap. Once I have that background complete, I used my heat gun to quickly dry the ink. And I'll be using this panel for the background of a shaker. I have some foam dimensional tape, folded it in half so I have the right thickness for the shaker. I want to make sure there's enough room for those sequins to move around. I cut the foam tape in thirds so it'll be the right width for this rectangle frame. Put some adhesive on the outside of the frame and then attach the acetate. So once that's in place, I can start building my little shaker window. I'll remove the release paper and start adding the foam to the back side of this frame. I make sure there aren't any gaps between the foam pieces so the sequins won't escape. As I'm adhering the foam, I'm also removing any little stray pieces of that release paper. After attaching the final piece of foam, I notice I do have a small gap, so I cut just a little sliver piece to fill that in. Adding some anti-static powder to the inside, it'll help prevent some of the sequins from sticking to the edge. Now I'll add some of the sequins to the shaker window. Don't want too many because I'm also adding a few of the ephemera pieces. So I'm actually going to remove some of the larger sequins here. So now I pulled out some of the small gardening tools. Thought that would look fun inside a shaker. I'm flipping them all upside down so they won't be upside down when you see the front of the card. And they won't be able to flip over inside the shaker. So now I'll seal those all in place with the blue cardstock, and it has all those little gardening tools stamped in the background. Now to start working on the rest of the card. I have this fun grid pattern paper piece for the background. In the center of all those squares are some very faint little flowers. Put my card front onto a card base. I've already stamped out the sentiment, I really dig you. I'll cut fishtails on each of the ends, then layer the sentiment on this blue cardstock. Now when I first designed this card, I had intended on putting this sentiment toward the lower portion of the shaker. I was going to add an extra piece of foam behind where the sentiment went, so you'd still be able to see all those shaker toppings. But as you can see, I did not do that, so I had to modify how I designed my card. So the sentiment will be going on the upper portion of this shaker box. I did add that scrap piece of cardstock to the middle of the sentiment before I adhere it, and I forgot to actually attach my shaker window. So there we go, now it's in place and I can attach my sentiment. I placed my acrylic block on top to let that glue dry for a few seconds. Now I'll add a few of the ephemera pieces. I have one of the little girls, went with the blonde girl. She matches nicely with this yellow flower. So I'm going to put 2 of the flowers on the right side of the sentiment. I will be covering up that sweet little heart on the sentiment, but that's okay. But I felt the card needed something else, so I decided to add a few peel-offs. I pulled out the purple holographic, but since the background paper is more blue instead of purple, it didn't quite go. So I changed my mind and I'm using the silver holographic peel-offs. So this is the narrowest width. I'll put one on the bottom and then one on the top. And I'm doing it right through the center of the little squares or diamonds. Then later I did change my mind and added one more peel off to the bottom. So you'll see that in the final photo. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 7. Now moving on to card number 8. I'm using some of the white cardstock that's included in the kit, and I have some Distress Oxide ink. This is the Spiced Marmalade color. I'm using a blender brush and adding some color to the background. And I'm only using one color. I wanted a soft orange color that will go nicely with the orange cardstock that's included in the kit. So I did speed this portion up quite a bit. Next, I pulled out the stencil that's included in the kit. It's this fun scattered heart design. I'll tape that in place using some mint tape. This is from scrapbook.com. I taped it to the stencil first, and then I'll tape it to my craft mat. And I dug through my stash and pulled out some Nuvo embellishment mousse. Now I've had this on hand for many years. It was a little dried out, but after adding some water, it worked just fine. This is the Indian Gold color, and I don't believe this is available anymore. I only own a few containers of the Nuvo embellishment mousse, and I thought this gold looked nice with the orange color. I'm using a spatula and spreading it all over the stencil, trying to make sure to get it filled in all those little openings. So once I have that complete, I can remove that tape and pull the paper away from the stencil. Isn't that a fun design? And it does add some nice dimension. Now I did let that dry for quite a while. I wanted to add some blue to the card, so I used some of the leftover pattern paper from the previous card, layer that on some dark blue cardstock, and I'll be adhering that to the left side of this panel. I'm going to tie in some more of the gold, so I'm using some gold pinstripe peel-offs, adding it to the edge of this blue pattern paper. Wrap the end around the back just to make sure it's not going to come off later. It's amazing that something as simple as Lizi's peel-offs adds such a lovely touch to the card. And Lizi sells a huge variety of colors and styles of her peel-offs, and she's constantly adding more. The pinstripe and the mini shapes are my favorite. So I'll be layering this panel on some of the orange cardstock that's included in the kit, and then on some dark blue cardstock. I used some liquid adhesive to adhere that first panel. Just want to make sure it's going to lay flat. Then I used my ATG for the next layer. Now I can put my card front onto a card base. Now I will admit I was unsure about this card at this point. I didn't love the colors. I really liked the stencil though. I wasn't loving the gold and orange and blue together, but I think it came together at the end. I'm using a lot of liquid adhesive to adhere this blue piece since it's going on top of all of those little gold hearts. Use my acrylic block to make sure that glue was going to adhere. Then I'll bring in one of the ephemera pieces, one of the larger floral bouquets. Add it to a scallop circle die cut. Before I adhere this piece, I will add some scrap cardstock to the right side of that scallop circle. Using this cardstock I have sitting next to me on the craft table, since you're not going to see it. Use a lot of liquid adhesive and adhere this to the card. Pulling out that acrylic block again, just for that extra added weight. I've already stamped out the sentiment. This is Hello There. It's from the Enjoy the Little Things stamp set. Now I'm trying to figure out where I want to place this on the card. Decided to place it underneath the floral bouquet toward the right. It didn't really work anywhere else on the card. So you can see I'm still changing my mind, trying to figure out where to place it, and I do end up placing it in the very first spot I tried. I will be putting some foam squares on the back, just in the areas it's going off of that scallop circle. So also put some little pieces underneath and then some liquid adhesive for the rest. So it may have worked out better if I used a longer sentiment that went all the way across the card, but like I said, I still think this worked out in the end. I'll use the glitter brush on just the main flowers of the bouquet. And I thought at this point the card was finished, but it still felt it needed one more thing. So using some of the ribbon that's included in the kit, I tied a bow. I have some glue dots on the back side and I'm adhering it to the upper left-hand corner near that floral bouquet. And there is the card all finished. Now moving on to card number 9. I'll be using the Love From Lizi background builder die set again. I have this beautiful floral paper with little squiggly lines and circles for the background. I used that larger rectangle die to cut out that piece. I'll be adding some peel-offs to the very background. You're not going to see very much of it, so I'm able to use some of the smaller scraps. In order to get those peel-offs nice and straight, I am using the grid marks on my craft mat. So I have the widest width and the narrowest width. Just putting a small piece on either end where it's peeking out from that rectangle die cut. Then I'll put my card panel onto a dark blue cardstock layer. I can add this floral panel next. I'm trying to decide if there was an up or down direction for this pattern paper, and I don't think there is. I use some liquid adhesive since it does have that faux stitch detail along the edge. I'll put my card front onto a card base. I won't have any of the white card base showing this time since most of the background is white. Then using a couple of the other dies that are included in the set, I have the piece for the sentiment. I use the sentiment Live in the Moment. It's on the Enjoy the Little Things stamp set. Before I adhere the sentiment, I will add that small scrap piece of cardstock to the right hand side. And then use some liquid adhesive to adhere it in place. I did cut out another circle die cut so I could have the matted layer. I'll add the scrap piece of cardstock to the right side of it. And then adhere it above the sentiment. So finishing off the card, I'll add a few of the ephemera pieces. The flowers inside the glass dome will go in the center of the circle die cut, and the two small flowers will go to the left of the sentiment. And I will pop up the two small flowers using some thin foam squares. For some finishing touches, I'll add a couple of the glitter enamel dots. I'm using this light yellow color. I'll put 2 of them in the upper right hand corner and 1 below the 2 flowers toward the left. I'll also bring in that glitter brush again and add it to all of the flowers on the ephemera pieces. And there is my finished card. This is card number 9. Another easy design you can create using Love From Lizi's background builder die set. Now moving on to card number 10. I'll be using a card sketch this time. This is MFT number 340. I have 2 different pattern papers. They coordinate perfectly together. The narrow strip on the left looks like a knit pattern, and the other is a purple pattern with a light peach colored splatter design. I'll layer this on some kind of a purplish blue cardstock. I did add one of the purple holographic peel-offs between the 2 pattern papers. I used some of the pearlescent cardstock from the add-on bundle for this large semi-circle die cut. I'll be using the largest ephemera piece that has the potting shed, another scarecrow, some flowers, gardening tools. First, I'll adhere this semicircle, and this die is from Sunny Studio. I've already stamped out the sentiment. This is Don't Let Things Bug You. Cut a fishtail on the right side. I'm just trying to figure out placement since this ephemera piece is fairly large. I'll adhere the ephemera piece first and have part of the sentiment banner going on top of that ephemera, just on the very lower portion. I'll put some liquid adhesive on the back of the sentiment banner. So it's just covering up the very bottom of the little watering can. And then I realize I do need to add a scrap piece of cardstock to the left side. And finishing touches, I'll add a couple of the glitter enamel dots, this time the orange color. I'll put 2 of them in the upper right hand corner and then 1 toward the left of the ephemera piece. And there is the finished card. This is card number 10. Now I decided to make just a couple more. I was having so much fun with this kit, I just couldn't stop. So I do have 2 bonus cards for you. For card number 11, I'm using the Leaves and Vines stamp set. This is one of the add-ons. I'm using the Daydream colored ink from Catherine Pooler. I have 2 of the vines and I'm creating a little border. So I'm using the larger of the vines first, and then for the smaller one, I'm going to fill in some of those gaps. I think someone was at the door at that point, so I did have to walk away. For this smaller vine, I will have it go off of the edge of the paper. So I brought in some scrap paper so I wasn't stamping on my craft mat. So there's my little vine border. I'm going to layer this on some purple cardstock, and this is cardstock from the kit. Using this fun pattern paper with lots of the little girls. There's some other little gardening icons on there as well. Using some more of the purple holographic peel-offs. I have the thinnest width and putting it on the edge of this vine piece. I love these purple holographic peel-offs, they're so pretty. I'll attach this piece toward the left of the pattern paper. Then I can adhere this panel on the purple cardstock. Put my card front onto a card base, and overall this card is fairly simple. The card panel went down just slightly crooked, so I did have to pull it up a little bit. I'll add a scallop rectangle die cut to the center so I can feature some more of the ephemera pieces. I will add some scrap cardstock on the right side of that die cut. And I did end up using 2 layers. Then I'll use some liquid adhesive to adhere it to the card. For the ephemera pieces, I have this fun shovel that has the sentiment, "Welcome to my garden." So I'll put that in the center, and I did decide to pop that up using some of the thin foam squares. I'll remove the release paper and adhere the shovel first. Then I have a few more of the small ephemera pieces, the little gardening tools, some leftover pieces that I didn't add in that shaker card earlier. And I'm just adhering them around the shovel. But the last 2, I'll overlap them, be over here in the lower left-hand corner. For a finishing touch, I'll bring in some more of the glitter enamel dots, put 2 of them in the upper right-hand corner. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 11. Now moving on to my final card, this is card number 12. I have this beautiful floral paper for the background. Layer this on some blue cardstock. I have another scalloped rectangle die cut. I used some pearlescent cardstock for that. The rectangle die cut has that fun stitched detail along the outside edge, but I decided to cover up 3 of the sides using the peel-offs that are included in the kit. I'm using the medium width. And I do have them hanging off the edge just a little bit. Next, I'll use a craft knife and miter the corners. So I'll be creating this little frame. Just remove those extra pieces. Press them down just to make sure they're not going to come off later. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and adhere the rectangle toward the center of this floral paper. Before I adhere this card front onto a card base, I'll be adding a stitched strip die cut toward the bottom. So this is going to cover up the lower portion of that scalloped rectangle die cut. I'll cut some scrap pieces of cardstock for the outside edge where it goes off of the scalloped rectangle die cut. Glue those down. I would have attached those scrap pieces to that stitched strip die cut, but I hadn't cut that strip down yet. It's wider than the 5.5-inch card base. We'll put some double-sided tape on the back, remove the release paper, and then adhere it to the card. Then I can flip that panel over, use my scissors, and trim off the extra. Next, I'll put ATG tape on the back and adhere my card front onto the card base. So I have that big opening to add a few ephemera pieces. And one of my favorite ephemera pieces is this fun pink ladder. So I definitely had to add it to one of the cards. Put some liquid adhesive on the back. Put down the ladder first. I'll add one of the little girl ephemera pieces to the right of the ladder. And I also have one of the watering cans. I'm adding some thin foam squares to the back of the little girl and also the watering can. Now for this sentiment, I decided to place it in the upper left-hand corner. I'm bringing in another older Love From Lizi stamp set. This is called Just Because. I'm using the small sentiment Hello. Since I already have the card basically assembled, I don't want to mess up stamping on the card. And I also use some Shimmer pearlescent cardstock for that rectangle. So I want to make sure it's not going to smear. I use some Ranger archival ink, and I also use my mini Misty to make sure I could get a nice solid impression. For some finishing touches, I'm bringing in the mini heart peel-offs in this pretty pink color. Put 2 of them underneath the sentiment and one of the small hearts above the sentiment. This pink color matches perfectly with the pink ladder. I'll also use the glitter brush and add some sparkle to the flowers on the girl's head and the flowers on the ladder. And of course a little extra sparkle to her pink boots. Then I'll use a couple of the glitter enamel dots. Use the blue color and put 2 of them in the lower right hand corner. So there is my finished card, and this is card number 12. This is another favorite card of mine. Now here's a quick recap of the 12 cards I made using Love From Lizi's April 2021 card kit. The theme is Really Dig You, and it's a fun gardening theme kit. As I'm recording this voiceover, the kit is still available. I will add an update in the description box when it sells out. I do have links provided in the description box for this kit, along with all the products I used in this video. Now here is everything I still have left over from the kit. 2 full sheets of cardstock and 2 almost full sheets of cardstock. I still have 3 full sheets of the 6x6 pattern paper and quite a few scraps. Lots of the glitter enamel dots. Still a ton of the ephemera. The kit does include quite a bit. Lots of the ribbon, still quite a bit of the sequin mix. I still have the scattered heart stencil, the stamp set, and of course the coordinating dies, and most of the peel off sheet, since I did use several other peel off sheets throughout the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.